professionals and sales reps.
Mm.
Is sales professionals find the way to do the work while sales reps find excuses for it. And so it's really interesting is nothing happens unless we take massive action. And the reason why I bring this up is everyone's looking for a shortcut. If you hang out on insert name of any social platform, everyone's looking for a shortcut, the quick tip, the hack to get them from where they're at to where they'd like to be as quick as possible with just minimal amount of work. But here's what's interesting. I'm on this deep Napoleon Hill journey. And I'm reading the book right now called How to Own Your Own Mind. And this is an in-depth conversation that Napoleon Hill had with Andrew Carnegie. It goes back to his conversation that was turned into a book called Mental Dynamite. And so what they did is the Napoleon Hill Foundation pulled out 3 good chapters out of Mental Dynamite, converted it to a book, and elaborated on it called How to Own Your Own Mind. And what was really interesting is Napoleon Hill asked, and it plays off of this doing the work, is Andrew Carnegie was asked by Napoleon Hill, hey, just walk me through, and I'm paraphrasing this, but walk me through what made you so successful. And this is what Andrew Carnegie drops on Napoleon Hill. By the way, this was back in 1908, 1909, so well over 100 years ago. And Andrew Carnegie said, the key to my success was self-discipline and constructive habits. This is coming from the wealthiest man in the whole world. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is How to Own Your Own Mind. He just went into this a little bit in more detail. But it all started to stem around doing the work. Yeah. You could be the smartest person in the room. You could be the smartest sales professional out there, smartest sales leader. If you're not putting any of this into action, you're just a smart person.
You mean AI is just not going to take care of it all for us and magically happen?
Well, here's what's interesting about this is, I mean, I'm an infant with all this AI stuff. And call me old fashioned. Y'all are going to throw darts at me, but I'm a pretty old fashioned guy. Do I use technology? Absolutely. Do I use AI? Like I'm crawling on my hands and knees on AI and I'm getting scabs all over the place because I'm just like working my way through this. But it's so interesting. I'm going to give a shout out to my dear friend, Dave Sanderson, because he calls AI authentic interaction, not artificial intelligence.
I like that.
AI is about authentic interaction. I can use all of this stuff. Here's what's interesting is I'm not going to bash any of this because it's just the way of the world. I mean, we're in this technology crazed world. But when we hide behind technology, we lose our voice and technology starts to speak for us. But in the sales world, and I've heard you guys talk about this on some of your episodes, it's all about conversations. Mm-hmm. And if we can't start a conversation in a very humanistic, non-salesy way, and if we rely on people to think for us or technology, it stunts our growth. And when it stunts our growth, we can get to the table. And this is, I just got to give a shout out to Weinberg on this one. So Mike Weinberg, if you're listening, I'm going to give you a shout out on this one. Is he put in his latest podcast, he started talking about social selling. I don't know if you caught it a couple days ago, but I commented on it and I said, hey, listen. Social. So I'm not here to, I use social all the time. I use the LinkedIn platform all the time, right? I communicate in on a daily basis. It's helped me grow my business. However, those who use social to get to the business table, but don't bring anything to the business table are empty suits.
There you go.
And this is what I'm afraid of that's happening in the world. And y'all, please don't throw darts at me. I'm just speaking what's on my heart on this one based on what I've seen. Is there's a lot of smart people out there. There's a lot of smart salespeople. There's a lot of smart sales managers, sales leaders, and owners of companies that are leveraging all of this technology and it's helping them grow their business. However, if you're leveraging all of this to help fill top of funnel just to get you to the table, if you're not bringing business substance and business goods and business conversation to the forefront, you're going to be viewed as being empty. And that's what I talk about at Selling from the Heart is there's a lot of empty suits that are out there. We need to fill the empty suits with education, empathy, and engagement.
Do you realize that we could probably spend the next 3 hours unpacking what Larry just said in 5 minutes? Like there was some, you know me, I'm usually the clarifier. I'm like, okay, well, let's come back here. What I heard you say, Larry, is initially, and I think there's more, but the nuggets were do the work and be disciplined and be human. Don't let technology get in the way of you doing the work and being human and actually adding value to people. I sum that up all right?
No, you did 100%. And man, I go back and I'm just listening to what you're saying. And I go back to my career and I spent, decades upon decades from the late 80s to the mid, 2015, 2016 in the office technology space. Between where Tom lives, I live into Los Angeles. And what was really interesting, I was never the smartest guy out there. I sold technology and still didn't know how half of it worked. Not that it wasn't important. It's just what was important to me was building trusting relationships, uncovering how to bring value, and understanding what the outcomes these people wanted to achieve and just be the conduit to help them get to where they want to be. Mm-hmm. But here's what was interesting is I just outworked everybody. And I've worked on this a long time. I'm a highly disciplined guy, but I work on it. I'm a consistent guy. I work at it. It just doesn't come easy. I always say this, doing work requires practice. Being disciplined requires practice. Bringing authenticity to the forefront requires practice. And if we don't practice, y'all are going to get what you get. And that's the inconsistencies that I talk about in sales. I see it straight across the board. It doesn't matter if it's a Fortune 25 company, a Fortune 100, Fortune 500, or just mom and pop insert name of business. If you're not willing to do the work, be consistent. In other words, do the right things right, even when you don't feel like doing them. And if you're not disciplined, yeah, you're going to get some results, but it's going to be like a never-ending roller coaster. You're just never going to get off it.
It's an interesting point, whether you're using social or technology or whatever to, I guess, make yourself more efficient and make yourself have bigger reach. But you're right. None of that is going to be replaced by not putting. And I think Larry, I think you're saying two things, right? You have to do the hard work, but you also have to have the mindset that you're going to do the hard work. And I think the mindset has to be there first. We talk a lot about this, Brandon. Okay, how am I going to build that discipline? How am I going to do the hard work? And then figure out how to use the tools and the strategies to make myself, as Carson always says, how do I get as many places as I can by using those different tools and strategies? How do I get myself in as many different conversations as I possibly can?
Yeah, and we all know this. Very well said, Tom. We all know this. Nothing, and I mean nothing, happens in sales unless you start a conversation.
Right.
And then if you want to layer on top of that, it's how you start these conversations. It's how you layer in these conversations. It's the words you use, the messaging you use. And I love that you brought up mindset, because we don't talk enough about that in sales. It's two things. I believe it's three things. It's all about, to me, is developing your skill set. You got to constantly be developing your skill set. I don't care where you're at in sales. I don't care if you're at the peak and the top of your game. You still got to develop your skill set. You got to develop your mindset on a continual basis, and you got to develop your heart set. It's just a big triangle, and you have to develop and connect your head to your heart. And I don't see enough of this being brought into the sales world. And that's what lights my fire. And you all know this is what I'm bringing to the forefront with selling from the heart. Is we all talk about being human. There's not a day that goes by, whether that be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or 30 minutes that I'm on LinkedIn, that somebody's not talking about being human in sales. And isn't this interesting? We're all humans. We're all freaking humans.
Most days anyway, yeah.
Well, but yeah, I mean, we all are. Let's just face it. I mean, call it what it is. We are all humans. But isn't it interesting what happens the minute we hide behind technology?
Or our title, or anything else.
Yeah.
Do you think, Larry, that the world of Zoom, the fact that we've moved to Zoom and all these virtual meetings and everything, has that made it worse, as you just said, hiding behind technology? You think it's given, I don't know if excuse is the right word, but is it, I guess, lowered the bar on what you believe the work level needs to be and how, the hard work and the mindset?
Oh boy. this is going to upset the apple cart, but I'm just going to hit it head on.
That's why we're here to
This is a mindset thing. And a lot of my business is conducted virtual. I choose to be that way. I mean, I'm hopping on a plane after this, but it's how y'all want to show up. And here's why. I believe you're responsible for how you show up. I don't care if this is face-to-face, if this is virtual, or if this is on the phone. And I really want people to key in on this, is you are 100% responsible for how you show up. If you want to be viewed as a sales professional, and I know y'all do, then you have to hold yourself accountable to doing professional things. Just because we're on a virtual call, I mean, in essence, we are. Just because we're on virtual right now doesn't mean that I shouldn't be bringing the best version of myself forward. Just because I'm making sales calls every single day. I got to grow my business just like everybody else. But if I don't bring my best version of myself, if I'm not acting professional in front of a camera, then what? Mm-hmm. And so to me, this is a mindset thing. And this is what a lot of people got to come to grips with. It's the way of the world. It's not going away. We got to blend in both of this. But I'll tell you this, you get what you get with me, whether this be behind the camera, on a phone, or face-to-face. I treat it as just one thing, right? I'm treating this conversation like we're all sitting in a room having a conversation, that we're all seeing each other.
I can attest. I've been on multiple Zoom calls with Larry, one-on-one, having personal conversations, and he's the exact same guy on screen, on stage, or in a Zoom.
But I think, you talked about a habit, right? That's a habit to get into. And I want to spotlight Bob's comment here, because I think this is interesting as well. He says, the companies the sellers work for don't see humans, they see accounts. And until that changes, and I think, going back to what you were just saying, Larry, I think the Zoom thing, I guess to some degree in that virtual meeting can help. It makes it easier to view people as accounts and companies and prospects and leads, and not humans, the way that you would if you're going to sit at a networking event or a dinner or whatever and shake hands and spend time with them. But I think going back to mindset, like you said, I don't know, Brandon.
Yeah, well, sorry, Larry, I'm going to jump in on that one, because it always comes back to mindset. Like if you want to be a sales douchebag in person, on Zoom, or on a call, you can be. If you want to be human, you want to truly seek to be an advisor, a trusted advisor, a giver, a servant leader, whatever term you want to use, and you can do that in any medium you want. But it's getting to that heart condition of the mindset that changes the behavior. And as Larry said earlier, practice at it. We're some of us are naturally more gifted at that than others, but we've got to practice at that. Like I've spent a lot of years practicing, how do I ask good questions to people? Because my natural tendency coming out of, college and grad school was honestly kind of a cocky, arrogant jerk that thought he knew it all. And I wanted to walk into meetings and tell everybody what to do and how they should do it, and didn't lead with questions. And I had a lot of rejection early in my career.
And I just got to throw this out, because, and this is, I'm going to bring out the trust word and the credibility word. And we have to think about this in a couple different ways. Is we got to be willing to slap trust and credibility up on the business table, whether that be face-to-face, whether that be on phone, whether that be on insert name of virtual platform, even on social. And we control this. We absolutely control this, because it goes back to how we show up. It's not insert name of company's responsibility in how you show up, right? You might work for a great company, or you might work for a company where it may not be so great and you're stuck, and that's your responsibility to find another place. However, you are responsible for how you show up, and it's perception of people. If you want to build trust and you want to build credibility, then be hyper aware of how you show up, how you interact, the words you use, the messaging you use, the tonality you use, the eye contact you use. And I could go on and on and on. So regardless if sellers are in an environment where companies may not be bringing it to them, guess what? find budget for yourself to learn out how to do all these things and take ownership of your career and do something about it.
Yeah, it's like Bob's comment that I see in there is, in his opinion, sellers, especially tech sellers, have the hardest time incorporating EQ into their conversations. They're trained to sell with IQ, not EQ. Well, find a new company or figure out a way to be the person you want to be in there. And I mean, what I've always found is if you're successful and you're closing deals, they tend to leave you alone and let you do what you're going to do. But if that's a challenge and you don't like it, then take responsibility and move on.
But see, Bob brings up a good point, because and again, I'm just throwing this out there. This is my thoughts and opinions on this. If you're in a transactional environment, it's hard to bring the emotional, get to the heart part of this, because you're coached and trained in all of your questions in everything, and your whole process is transactionally based.
Mm-hmm.
It's not transformationally based.
Hey, we have another person here. One of our previous guests here, Christy, is trying to push you out, Larry. And
hey, you know what we should? Hey, Tom, grab the link and email it to her or text it to her real quick and see if we can get her on. That'd be awesome. Anyway, no, I don't want to take away from Larry. Sorry, Larry, I didn't mean that. I love Christy, but I don't want to take away from Larry.
It's all good. Christy can come on and raise the bar tremendously.
I mean, we need like 4 or 5 people to replace Carson. So
that's true. That's true.
I'll email Mike. You can get him on too.
You know what? I'm gonna flesh that out a little bit more, because I think, you know, what Bob said, and Larry, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of these environments that it's not. I mean, I've heard it. I had people laugh at me and tell me I was wrong. They said, you know what, building rapport and relationship with people isn't important anymore. Like, but that was the culture that they were in too. Everything was about screw that. Who cares? Find out if they want to buy, and if they want to buy, help them. If they don't want to buy, screw them, move on, and go to the next person. It was just the modern day boiler room. It was just in more digital channels.
Well, see, you know, gosh, man, oh man, let's see. I just got to say this, and you know what? If you're in a situation, and we've all been there, I'll raise my hand. I've been in those situations. I think everybody has, where you know it's not the right environment. It doesn't align to your values. Right. And we've all been there. But guess what? There's plenty of other positions out there. There's plenty of other companies out there that align to your values, that align to your goals, that align to your passions, your purpose, and all that. It's going to require you finding those companies that are out there and raising your hand saying, hey, you know what? I'm here, type thing. And I'm keeping it silly simple, but it's just to drive the point home. Your product's the environment you're raised in. Yeah. And if you're raised in those type of environments, then obviously you're just going to succumb to what's around you. And this is why there's so much misalignment. There's massive amounts of misalignment in sales, because they've been sitting in environments and bullpens where deep down in their heart, they know it's not the right thing to do, but they're doing it because that's where they're at. If you get what I'm cooking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Larry, and we were talking before the show, we've had, you know, Brandon and I had quite a few people come to us recently saying, God, I'm just struggling, right? I'm just not able to get pipeline going the way I need to. My pipeline's not moving. The sales velocity is slower, all of that. What would you say is one thing, right? And again, I think it's probably going to come back to mindset is my guess, but what would you say is sort of the one thing that you would tell that person to do that could potentially move the needle right away?
It's going to be a couple things, but the first thing is I'd key in on the types of conversations you're having. Now, y'all may not agree with me on this. That's okay. It's not going to be the first time this has happened, but I would just sit down and I would just start asking this person, walk me through the types of conversations you're having right now. Whether you pick up the phone, you're sending an email, you're doing a social touch, walk me through this. What's it look like? What's it sound like? That'd be the first thing. Second thing is this, and I write about it in Selling from the Heart, and it all goes back to sales funnel work. And it goes back to consistency. It goes back to discipline. It was something that I held myself accountable to was this. I knew if I wanted to have an ever-flowing sales funnel, I had to build an ever-flowing relationship funnel. Now, in order for me to build relationships, I got to meet people. I got to engage in conversations. I got to connect with people. They may not be all sales conversations right away. Here's a conundrum in sales: weak sales funnels or weak relationship building skills. And where I'm going with this, and please follow along with me on this, is when people have weak sales funnels, it's because of lack of prospecting and doing the basic fundamentals. They become inconsistent at doing this. So when you're inconsistent at doing this, you're out of practice, and then you become desperate and you start doing things you normally wouldn't do if your sales funnel's full. So if we flip this around, it's so simple, but yet it's so difficult to put into action. Is little simple things. And I'd be telling this person this, and it's what I held myself accountable to when I was in sales. And it's how I built Selling from the Heart to where it is right now, is every day, hold yourself accountable to small things you know you can achieve. I knew as a seller, I can connect to one person a day. I knew as a seller, I can have one conversation a day. I knew as a seller, I can set up one appointment a day, whether that be with a new opportunity or somebody in my current client base. I knew that. So then all I did is I held myself accountable every single day to do these things. And it's the law of multiplication. It just over time, if you do all these things, if you do those 3 things every single day, day in and day out, month in and month out, what's 3 times 5? That's 15. Over a month, that's over 60 conversations and connections. Math the math on this one. You see where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. It's just the simple things. It goes back to blocking and tackling. Thing is we've gotten away from basics of blocking and tackling. And so when we do all these inconsistent things, you get inconsistent results.
So we have another guest coming in here.
Yay!
I'm not going to miss an opportunity to pepper Larry with questions. Are you kidding?
Christy Jones, what is happening?
The master, you guys, Larry, they've been getting some heavy hitters, man. Mike Weinberg, you're on now. Like, heck yeah, I'm going to ask some questions.
This is a first on the show too. We've never had an impromptu guest come on, man. I'm impressed.
I saw it and I was like, and I got on a little late. I was like, "Where's Carson? How are they going to do this without Carson?" It's the trio. You can't be lopsided like that.
Well, thank you. I think we've almost balanced it. We've almost balanced it.
That's
now
right.
With you and Larry. So Christy, we're going to talk about Larry's book, but before we do that, if you have any questions, jump in and what are your questions for Larry?
Honestly, Larry and I actually have spent some time together recently, so I'm super excited. Are you going to which book are you going to talk about, Larry? I'm just curious.
The one that's coming out next year.
Okay, good. No, I just want to be I all have questions. I want to be a fly on the wall. I don't know enough about the new book yet, so I'm excited that we're going to preview it today.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because you had brought up, Larry, the trust formula, and I want to make sure we have time to go through that and just talk a little bit about what you've been doing, what's in the second book, and give us a sneak preview.
Well, no, thanks. So this goes back actually a couple years ago. So Daryl's my podcast partner. Daryl, Amy, I love you. We were sitting, oh man, this was a couple years ago, Brandon, in your neck of the woods down in Atlanta. And so we had
was this the time, Larry, that you texted me that you were going to be in town?
No, dude,
you came in town and had a great time and left and never texted me while you were here. I'm just clarifying real quick.
Brandon, that was great clarification, and you just threw a dart at me, nailed me, freaking bullseye. So yes, just my bad. My bad. I just didn't have enough time. And it's not an excuse. It was reality. I was like in and out doing a workshop, and I just didn't have any time. This is good.
Daryl was telling me about.
Oh, dude, don't.
You guys were drinking beer. You were in the sun.
No,
all this downtime.
No, stop it, because that I know for a fact that didn't happen. But nevertheless, no. This goes back a couple years ago. And Daryl and I had spent a couple days with our business coach, and then he introduced us to his mentor, who now has become a really near and dear friend of ours at Selling from the Heart. And man, it was a tough conversation, because they go, you know what? You're doing great things with Selling from the Heart, but until you can figure out how to take Selling from the Heart and sit down with an executive and help them take all of the foundational skills that you bring out in the book, Selling from the Heart, and have them turn that into revenue, I think you're going to have a difficult time. I'm being massively transparent with this right now.
Wow.
So a couple years ago, we sat down and we whiteboarded this out, and we locked ourselves in a hotel for 2 days in Atlanta. And we sat down and said, okay, what's the premise of selling from the heart? Because we all know this. I mean, I didn't expect selling from the heart to be what it is. I mean, when I started the podcast 6.5 years ago and the book came out 5, I had no idea all of this was going to transpire. I really didn't. Just being open and honest about all of this. But Mark Hunter said, hey, it was a near and dear friend of mine. He goes, you got to figure out how to take this and turn it into a business. And that's what we did. And it was a struggle. And I'm going to admit it. It was a struggle. It was a struggle until we figured out how to take selling from the heart and turn it into revenue. And it was taking the foundation of this to help sellers, sales leaders, executives, and presidents of company do 2 things. Have their salespeople and sales leaders build trust and credibility in a world where trust is anemically low. And what was interesting is, can I give a shout out to a near and dear friend of mine? Would you allow me to?
Absolutely.
So Dave Sanderson, who I have massive respect for, who, got to ride alongside Tony Robbins for a long time, said, you know what? People will remember things in some kind of an equation. So right away, we sat down and we whiteboarded out something, and Daryl and I go, hey, we got to call this the trust formula. If we can figure out how to build a trust formula, this will help sellers and sales leaders and executives help their sellers drive revenue based on the foundation of selling from the heart. So we just whiteboarded it out. We wanted to keep it simple. We wanted 4 things in it. And we came up with authentic relationships plus meaningful value times an inspirational experience times disciplined habits is the foundation of building trust. And then we got our creative minds working and said, okay, how can we apply this into the 3 facets of selling, which is managing your clients, selling, and prospecting for new business. And we wove in the trust formula and built out a whole coaching program based on how do sellers build authentic relationships and how do they bring meaningful value? Those 2 things right there are what we call 2 sides of the trust coin. By the way, the trust formula I unpack in my 2nd book. And in authentic relationships, it's who you know. And I'm going to tell you this because I'm deep in some very large companies with this. And what has me scared, and if you're an executive watching this, or if you're a leader watching this, I'm here to tell you this: your sellers are not deep in these accounts. They're shallow. Their relationships are shallow at best. And I don't mean to be negative. I'm just speaking the truth because I see it. I see it every single day. So when we start thinking about how do y'all build trust in a world that really lacks trust, just look at this right now. And this is revenue that people are leaving on the freaking table day in and day out, is if you can build genuine, authentic relationships and cast that net high, wide, and deep, and then layer upon that meaningful value. In other words, you got to bring business smarts, business goods, business value, business conversation to the forefront. You do those 2 things, you've already raised the bar in the sales world and in your current accounts. Now, if there's got to be a multiplier on this. And the multiplier on this is inspirational experiences. That's how you show up. And you have to inspire and influence your clients and your future clients into doing better business. The last part of this is you got to be disciplined with it, and you got to bring disciplined habits. So if we broke this down even into its minute format, it's it's who you know, what you know, how you show up, and when you show up. And we built this all out in 2 days. And then I had to go out and prospect. Hello. I had to go out and prospect for opportunities. And I found myself, because of the success of the podcast and the book, in some very, very large, well-known companies. And I said, hey, how open-minded would you be to testing this out? And sure enough, it caught fire. And we've been able to move the revenue needle massively inside companies because we're bringing things in that's new, that's different, that's creative. It's not reformatted stuff that people have seen for the last 10 and 15 years that has their unique spin on it. We're delivering things that I believe haven't been delivered before. And here's what I'm uncovering. And then I'll put pause on this, is the two things that I see that are sorely lacking in sales. And there's a lot, but everyone says this: I'm in the people business and I'm in the relationship building business. Hang out in sales for any length of time, you hear those two things. I think you all will agree. Here's my question that I fire back at sales leaders. If those two things are important to you, when's the last time you have coached and trained your entire sales team on how to develop their people skills and relationship building skills, knowing where trust and credibility sits? And I will tell you this, as we are talking right now, not one leader has given me an answer.
That's because they're not
why I'm bringing
that.
Nope. And that's why I'm bringing this book into the forefront. It's time that I've just become a voice and I'm waving the flag on it. And I see it. I see it in massive, massive, massive multi-billion-dollar year companies.
Well, what I find really interesting of what you just said on that, Larry, is the fact that you went in and tested it. And I'm interested to find out, because I know when we walk into organizations, oftentimes the viewpoint is it's a numbers game, right? How do I get more numbers? How do I get more breadth? And what I'm hearing you say is, no. How do you go deeper, right? How do you get more depth? I mean, and maybe off, or at least align the breadth and the depth together. Again, that goes back to our mindset thing. How does that, especially in large organizations that have, entrenched processes, how are you finding that? Is it like an earthquake? Is it very difficult? How is it, how are they going through that mindset shift?
I said, great question. I fire right back. I said, y'all got to give us some time, right? The issues that you have, and I have pretty direct, adult, assertive conversations with executives. I don't hide behind conversation. I just call it out as I see it and get people to think, is if you want to move the revenue needle, if you want to increase your profits, if you want to increase referrals, if you want to grow new business, if you want to cross-sell things to your current clients, you have to be willing to do things different. And it doesn't happen like that. And here's the thing that just drives me absolutely insane, bonkers. I even dealt with this last week with somebody. Hey, by the way, can you tell me what my return on investment is in bringing you in? I'm like going, really? Mentally, I'm going, you're kidding me. I respect the fact that you asked me what's your return on investment, but listen, we've agreed all these issues are festering and have been in your sales department for a while. Do you think you can just walk in, bring in anybody, whether that be me, Christy Jones, Tom Burton, Brandon Lee, insert name of anybody else? You think they're going to flip the switch and instantaneously revenue is going to increase by 20% and profits are going to increase by 10? It's insane. It's your return on effort. And if you're not willing to put forth any effort or take any action on any of this and hold your people accountable to do things, then guess what? Stick a great big fan in front of your face and just chuck money at it. Just keep doing that with it.
Hey, Larry, I love all of this. I'm like completely aligned with all of this. But how does this bump up against the Chat GPT world that we're now living in, right? So how are we going to get sales leaders to understand the go deeper, not wider situation is where you're going to need to head when all anybody talks about is how we're going to automate everything?
So here's what's interesting, and y'all are going to laugh at me. I don't play in that world. I'm shooting straight with y'all. I don't play in that world. And the world that I play in, and I had to take a hard look at this and this was the hockey stick growth in our company, is I had to start taking a look at where does selling from the heart resonate and where does it not resonate? And I wanted to find the channels that this message resonates. And where I found that it resonates is in the heart of America. And when I say the heart of America, I'm talking manufacturing, blue collar, plumbing, food services, things like that. Guess what? Some of these people don't even know what social is. But I work in environments where these are full cycle salespeople who are responsible for bringing everything to the forefront. I'm not discrediting technology, Christy, by no means. But if I sat down and started to coach these people on what Chat GPT is, some of them don't even know what LinkedIn is. But what they do know, they're in environments where they're high relationship sellers, where it's face to face, blue collar. To me, this is selling. I'm not discrediting all the other things, but I'll tell you this. And I got tagged into a social post about a week ago, and it was a cold calling post. These people taught, right? These two people talking about, is cold calling dead? I mean, it just stick a needle in my eye, right? Can you all find something better to talk about? And so they tagged me in the post. So I just go, you know what? I can't blow these people off. I was tagged into the post. So I said, isn't this going to be interesting? I'm going to be tagged into this post in 2045 when y'all are talking about the same thing. And so the point being is, the reason why I don't go down this road with technology and all that is not that I don't know anything about it. It's just that in the world that I play in, it hasn't come to the forefront. I'm not dodging the question, Christy.
No. And I want to make a good point here, because I love the answer you gave. And for those sales reps and sales leaders who are listening, what Larry just said is, I know my ICP.
Yep.
I'm not here to try to drag people who are not my ICP into a world they don't want to be drug into. And so the easiest sale for me is to sell and coach and consult and teach people who want to be coached, consulted, and taught to. And so I love what you said, because I said this back in the day. I remember when my very first company was an e-learning company. And I said to my sales reps, we are not here to convince people that training their employees is valuable, that there's benefit to that. We're here to take people who already believe in professional development and give them an option for a new way. And I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and there is. And I'm going to throw a stake in the ground, a big, huge freaking stake in the ground on this one. Is there's a whole other bigger, badder sales world that's out there other than what's being portrayed on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's funny you say that, because I have a software company, and we have a CRM product that is focused on the manufacturing and wholesale distribution industry, right? Those sellers are very much like you just described.
Yeah,
100%. They get in the truck every day, or they go out and they're visiting job sites. They're doing that stuff, and they're very relationship oriented inherently in what they're doing, right?
Yep.
And clearly what you're doing is, I believe, helping them go to another level. But Christy, what I'm hearing is, now if I go to the other side in the tech world, or some of the the tech world needs this worse than the people that we're talking about here, you know?
Yeah, that's my frustration, right? Is all we want to do is talk about how we can hack what we're doing, which is going to make, sales professionals less professional, less equipped to sell, and, to sell what their product or service is, when all we really need is what Larry's talking about.
So here, I just got to bring something to the forefront, and it plays on what we're talking about. I'm an avid book reader, and I got to bring back this book that I talked about in the very beginning of our conversation, Brandon and Tom. Christy, I don't think you were on. I'm reading a book called How to Own Your Own Mind. And it's brought to the forefront by Don Green and the Napoleon Hill Foundation. Don Green's the executive director. And How to Own Your Own Mind, they took 3 key chapters out of Mental Dynamite, which is a conversation between Napoleon Hill and Andrew Carnegie. But here's what's important that I wanted to bring, because it plays off of what we're talking about. There was 2 things that Andrew Carnegie brought to the forefront in the book. He talked about synthetic imagination, and he talked about synthetic and creative imagination. And he said what synthetic imagination is taking the things that have already been out there and just putting just a unique spin on it. So where do I equate that to? Exactly what's happening right now in the social selling world, the AI world, the tech world, the LinkedIn world. This is all synthetic imagination. people are just taking the ideas that everyone's already talking about and just rehashing it, and they're all becoming spin doctors on all this. My opinion. Creative imagination part of this, Andrew Carnegie talked about, is bring new ideas, new ways of thinking to the forefront. And he said America was built on creative thinkers and creative imagination. And so the point I'm making here is what I'm bringing to the forefront with Selling from the Heart is creative thinking and creative imagination to get us to think differently. What I see, hang out on LinkedIn for 5 minutes and all you see is synthetic imagination. Everyone's talking about the same thing day in and day out. No disrespect to anyone. I'm just calling it as I see it. And they're just taking everything that everyone's already talking about and they're putting their personal spin on things. After a while, it just, again, my 2 cents is it just becomes noise and people drown out noise. But growth, true growth, comes from creative thinkers and creative imagination. And we got to be willing, if we want to raise the bar in sales, we got to bring creative thinking and creative imagination to the forefront, which means we have to be willing to do things completely different and get people to think completely different about their approach to selling. That's my whole goal with what I'm doing at Selling from the Heart.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think you're in the right vein, Larry. I am going to push back a little bit on it. I don't think everything, and I'm not trying to be defensive, but I think there are some things inside of even social that are unique and creative. It's hard, and I'm going to say this because I think what we've been doing around social has been really, really difficult for us to make traction because we don't align with the give us a latest hack, right? Tell me how to write a social post that gets high engagement. We don't do any of that. And we're more like you, where we lead with relationship and trust and being authentic and being an advisor. And Carson says all the time, like, we're here, we gotta be serving first. And if we don't do that, and like when Mike was here, we talked about, Mike and I both got on our soapboxes about the charlatans that were out there selling shit because they were a LinkedIn expert. And that meant they knew how to push buttons and they would get people all excited of like, oh, we got the new algorithm hacked and this is what you do. And people go, ooh, and it was all bull. And I think that's what you're saying. I think there's opportunity everywhere, even though it's an existing, like within LinkedIn, within whatever, there's ways to still bring a uniqueness and a creativity to it that is still like the heart of that American spirit of creating something new, even in some of these old rappers.
And you know what?
Used rappers.
And you know what? Kudos to what you just said, Brandon. And here's what I love about this conversation. And here's what I don't see enough of. This is a nice, healthy conversation. Right? We may not agree with each other all the time. That's okay.
Yeah.
But here's what's interesting.
That doesn't happen a lot anymore.
But everyone's too, again, my 2 cents on this, everyone's too afraid to speak their mind. Own your ideas, own your thoughts, stay true to them, and throw them out there. Right? I put out a social post this morning, and some guy just, it was all good. He goes, I don't agree with you. I said, that's okay. It's no big deal. Hats off to you. I'm glad you stated your opinion. Here's my 2 cents on it, right? Yeah. There's not enough of that. And so what happens is we just have everyone high-fiving and slapping each other. Hey, right on, Brandon. Right on, Tom. Hey, Christy. God, that's so good. And then, you put that on there because you want to fall into the light gap. And then afterwards you go, holy crap, man, I really didn't agree with that. That was just a bunch of bull crap. But you find yourself just swimming in the sea of what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. It's why Tom and I have been having those conversations amongst ourselves lately, saying, you know what, we've got to be even more bold. Like we thought we were being bold, but it's like we got to be even more bold and more bold and more bold and trust that our audience is like our customers are going to find us. And we get that, right? We get the random call or what we think is a random call that says, hey, we've been listening to you guys for a long time now. We need your help. You're like, oh, sweet. Right. But I do think I agree with that, Larry. Like, and I feel Tom and I were talking about this a lot. Like, why are we not even bolder than what we're saying? Because there's so many voices out there that live in the sea of sameness. And you're right. Everybody's high-fiving with the same BS. Like, this is what you're supposed to do. And it's wrong. You've really convicted me on something, or at least brought something to the forefront of my mind that I'm embarrassed about. And yet I'm just glad that I have clarity on it right now. I wrote my book and launched my book in 2014, and it went over like a rat sandwich. And I couldn't figure out, like, what the heck? Like, this is the way I built 3 successful companies. And I didn't get a reception very well at all. And now what I'm realizing is I was talking to the wrong audience, because my book was all about know yourself, be human, respect your team, respect your employees, help them be better versions of themselves. Like, I had somebody tell me one thing in my book I said was, I genuinely meant it, that everybody that started working there, within the first week or whenever I was in town, I would sit down with all of them and say, my goal is when you leave this company, you leave better than you are today.
Yep.
But I don't know what better is. So you and I are going to partner with each other to figure out what better is. And we're going to create a path for you to be better, because I know no matter when you leave, if I pour into you this way, you're going to be awesome while you're here. And that's going to help grow the company. And I had many CEOs look at me and go, bullshit, that won't work. People don't care.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I did it and it worked. And then I slowly started to cower to the voices and honestly just kind of put my book away and was like, I don't know why it worked for me, but nobody else seems to care.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, you're welcome. No, and thank you for sharing, by the way. I just have to, Tom, sorry, I'm hijacking your comment section just really quick, I want to hit on something that Bob put in chat. He said, do you think genuine creativity is a rare trait or is it common? Here's what's interesting about this. And Bob, great question, is being genuinely creative takes practice. And which means you got to be constantly learning new things, reading new things, and listening to new things. It's hard to be creative and bring new ideas to the forefront if you haven't read a book in years, you haven't listened to a podcast in years, and so forth. Simple reason is I read every single day. Literally, I read every single day. I read leadership books. I read spiritual books. I read personal development books. I read mindset books. And I'm going to raise my hand on this. I do not read sales books. Though I've written a book that classified in sales, I don't read sales books. But what I've gotten is creative.
Why? Can you tell us why? I mean, I think I know why, but I'd love to hear you say why.
Oh man, you're throwing me on the spot, dude. I'm just gonna say it. I got thick skin. I sold copiers for 30 years in LA. I got really thick skin on this one because everyone tends to talk. Oh man. Please don't, you guys just can't take this the wrong way, is everyone starts talking about the same thing. There's only so many different ways you can talk about prospecting. There's only so many different ways you can talk about closing and objection handling and things like that. All due respect, because my friends have written some freaking amazing books. But after a while, and I've been in enough conversations with salespeople who have played mental gymnastics with themselves as they hop from one sales book and one sales author to another. And what it affirms, in my opinion, is this: when you guys do not do the inner work and all you do is chase the outer success, you're going to run from one sales book to another sales book to another sales book. If you can read spiritual books, mindset books, personal development books, and if you can look in the inner cupboards of who you are to become better, then and only then read to your heart's delight sales books. My opinion, I'm throwing it out there. People can hate on me. I've been called worse, but creative ideas is about, I'm bringing spiritual ideas into my coaching. I'm bringing mindset things into my coaching. I'm bringing leadership things into my coaching. I'm bringing personal development things into my coaching. And people are going, yes, give me more of that stuff. The minute, literally, because I've tested this out, the minute I start talking about sales-centric type things, I get salespeople freaking tuning out on me all day long.
People should strive to be better people and then they'll be better professionals. Like you can't be at the top of your game if you're not one with if you haven't done your work, you don't understand you don't understand what drives you, what triggers you have. Like if you can't, the best way to be a better professional is to be a better person.
I want to piggyback on that to say, from like the social side, what we do know is that personal posts that relate to business are by far the most engaged post. Mm-hmm. And when I tell that to sales leaders, a lot of times like, oh yeah, we don't allow that. Like, why not? Well, because LinkedIn is about business. I'm like, okay, so let me ask this question. If you have an account manager that takes a customer out to lunch, what can they talk about? Well, what do you mean? They said, well, you just said they can't be personal. No. I mean, on LinkedIn, you can't be personal. That doesn't make any sense. When you go to lunch, 90% of that conversation is personal or more. Why? Because that's where we build rapport and relationship and connect with people.
Oh, so spot on. I'm a big fan. I mean, there's one TV channel that I watch. We stream everything, but I'm a CNBC junkie. I'm addicted to CNBC, and I could watch reruns of Shark Tank all day long. In fact, I was watching it last night, and I'm just reciting the valuations and all that. My wife goes, "How many times have you seen this?" And I go, "Enough." Point being is there's another one that I watch, and I encourage salespeople to watch this one. It's called The Profit by Marcus Lemonis. Marcus Lemonis, I just love this guy. And he's the CEO of Camping World. I believe he's still the CEO of Camping World. And I remember on an episode, and I write about this in my second book, is he talks about this. He goes, business is personal. And in the show, The Profit, yeah, it's made for TV, but it's still real deal stuff. He invests in struggling small businesses. And he said, listen, Brandon, if I'm going to invest in your business, I got to personally get to know you. I got to get to know what makes you tick. Therefore, he firmly believes business is personal. It's hard for me to get to know you and do business with you if you put this big wall up. And this is the whole conundrum with social. And think about where trust and credibility sits. Yeah. And then we wonder why we have these issues in sales.
I work with a sales rep, and I was shocked to see the other day, I was snooping around in his profile, and I've been working with him for 2 or 3 years. He's got 10,000 followers. And I was like, how do you get 10,000 followers? Well, you know what he talks about? He's a recovering alcoholic. And all of his posts are around messages to try to help others that are in the struggle. And if he can help, he's being, he's authentically putting out his issues and his problems and how he's dealing with them. And he's a big mindset guy, big exercise guy, loves to hike and all these things. And I was like, wow, like it's just what you said. And I remember being so shocked. And I was like, but he's not talking about sales at all on LinkedIn. I mean, these are LinkedIn followers. He's not talking about that at all. He's every day putting out something to try to help somebody else who's having a struggle day.
See, and Larry, I think that is selling from the heart applied to social.
100%. 100%.
Yep. And that is some of the stuff that Tom and I get laughed at the most when we talk to sales leaders and CEOs about where's the value of social, because it's not selling. This is why I hate the term social selling. It's either some hack or some charlatan selling like, oh, we're going to turn on this automation and you're going to have all these leads. And social is about just that. It's about being social. It's about being a human. It's about demonstrating that and allowing people to connect with you because you're putting yourself out there. And then guess what happens? You've been saying this all day. Sales comes from conversations. But if you're not creating conversations, you're not getting sales. And with social, you got this thing like you can have basically, thousands of these digital conversations that lead to one-to-one conversations every day. But you got to show up the right way. And most people are too scared to show up the right way because they're scared to talk about their journey of alcoholism or anything else.
Yep.
Man, I can't believe we're now almost an hour. Larry, I know you need to get to the
Oh my
airport.
gosh.
No,
I know.
I just looked at my phone. You know what? This is a conversation, and I'm just going to share some with y'all and so forth. Is we've been having personal conversation and business conversation woven in, or is that a right word? Woven,
Interwoven.
woven into this whole hour. This requires practice, people.
Yeah.
It's all about conversations. It's personal and business conversations. This all requires practice. Hold yourself accountable to having conversations every single day. And you will imagine what will happen to your sales funnel. Dude, sorry, man. We could probably go. We could probably go another hour. Brandon, I want to say this. By the way, it's Brandon's anniversary today. So I wanted to say publicly, happy anniversary, Mr. Brandon Lee.
Thank you, sir.
Enjoy your day.
It's not just any anniversary. It's his 25th anniversary.
25th anniversary.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. Yeah.
So
thank you. Thank you.
No,
very proud of
you're
that.
very welcome. It's been an honor to hang out with you guys. Thank you.
Well, and I want to say two things or three things, because number one, Christy, I'm so glad you jumped on, and I loved our Zoom call the other day, and we're going to keep talking. Number two, I'd say, Larry, we did this the exact same thing last time when you were here. We're like, we need to book 3 hours next time. And number three, I'm going to say is I had no idea we were an hour into it. I think there was about 25 minutes there where I just kind of fanboyed and was listening to Larry and going through all these mental notes. So like, I need to remember, okay, I'm gonna listen to it again because I got a deep dive on this and deep that. So I had no clue we were hitting an hour, but that was
and we agreed we were going to go 45 minutes. So there we go.
Oh, good. It's all good. Hey, Tom Burton, send the invoice to Brandon Lee for the extra.
I will do that. Yeah, I will do that. All right. Well, Larry, I know your book's coming out next year. We'll have you back on next year. We'll get more on that. I think we do like a telethon or something next year. We'll just do like 6 hours. We'll have everybody come on. It'll be great.
Wonder if we could pull off like a 24-hour marathon where we bring Christy on, Larry on, we bring all everyone else back. But,
I love it. I go to bed at 10 p.m. though. It's got to be before 10 p.m. I'm an early to bed guy.
Larry, just anyone else listening, where do you want them to go out and find you if they want to reach out and learn more from you?
You can go two places. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find on LinkedIn. It's Larry Levine. You can find me on LinkedIn in 2 seconds. And if you want to find out what we're up to, just go to sellingfromtheheart.net. And I'll throw one last thing out. If you want a free signed copy of my book, just go to sellingfromtheheart.net/book. I'd be more than happy to send you one.
Wow. And awesome. Captain Kirk here is a little nervous, Brandon, about your bigger and bolder self. So don't scare the audience. All right. Don't scare the audience away. But
if I do, blame Larry. He just empowered me.
That's right.
It's all good.
All right. Well, Larry, Christy, thank you for coming on. Great show.
Hey, Christy Jones, great seeing you.
Thanks for letting me hijack.
Carson will probably never want to miss a show again after he hears about this.
Permanent Carson replacement right here. Sign me up.
That's it.
All right. Thanks,
awesome.
everybody.
All right. You're welcome. See you guys later.
Thanks, you all.
All right. Bye. See ya. All right. Take care. Bye.